3 years ago, I met Thomas while working at a telecom company. He was my boss, 4 years my senior, and a very dependable man, especially when it came to mentoring me at work. I appreciated his clear guidance immensely. We became good friends, often enjoying dinners together. When he asked me out, I was overjoyed, especially since I had never dated anyone before. I had always been more fascinated by cartoon characters than real people, which might sound a bit odd. Seeing my friends from high school and college settle down one by one put some pressure on me, but falling in love with Thomas was a transformative experience. I promised myself he would be my first and last love, and my excitement was palpable when we started dating. We quickly fell in love and got married, but life took a challenging turn when I became pregnant. The idea of going through pregnancy and raising a child on my own overwhelmed me, especially with Thomas's attitude. He seemed almost smug, as if he had anticipated this scenario. One day, unable to bear the strain, I retrieved divorce papers from my room and presented them to him. His initial shock soon turned into a red-faced mix of embarrassment and anger when I urged him to sign them quickly, claiming it was his idea, and I would file them the next morning. I sternly warned him to watch how he treated me, promising that he would regret looking down on me. My name is Elizabeth. I'm 29 years old, and I used to be a housewife. Now I'm determined to reclaim my independence and show Thomas that I am stronger than he ever anticipated. A year after we first met, Thomas and I tied the knot. He was a charming man, quite popular among our female colleagues, and I was thrilled to be his wife. The flood of congratulations and well wishes from everyone made me incredibly joyful, blissfully unaware of the challenges that lay ahead. The day after we registered our marriage, I casually mentioned to Thomas about my job, half joking, "Now that we're married, you expect me to quit my job, right?" His response took me by surprise. "I've always wanted my wife to focus solely on home matters. Don't worry, I can support us with my income," he stated. This was unexpected. "But this is so sudden. You never told me this before," I replied. Until that moment, Thomas had never hinted that he wanted me to quit my job. I had accepted the job on my father's advice, and the idea of quitting abruptly didn't sit right with me. I tried to argue, but Thomas's silent gaze silenced me. "I should have told you earlier, but it's too late now. Starting tomorrow, you don't need to go to work. I'll take care of the handover," he declared. The news that I was to start staying home from the next day was so sudden that it left me reeling. However, Thomas's decision was final, and since he was also my former boss, I felt powerless to contest it. Committed to making our marriage work, I focused on managing household tasks and tried hard to meet Thomas's expectations. I prepared his favorite meals diligently, secretly hoping for some acknowledgement or appreciation, even though Thomas rarely commented on my efforts. As days turned into months, the dynamic in our home began to feel more like a boss-employee relationship rather than a partnership. One day, seeking some interaction, I asked, "Is my jacket clean? I have an important meeting tomorrow." His prompt and assertive reply, "Yes, of course," reminded me of his somewhat old-fashioned and commanding nature. Despite everything, I reminded myself of how fortunate I was to be married to him and continued striving to meet his expectations. With no personal income, I relied entirely on Thomas for financial support, which often made our relationship feel unbalanced. I longed for the days when I was recognized for my professional abilities, not just my efficiency in handling domestic chores. The shift from being colleagues to this dependent dynamic was challenging, and I found myself yearning for the respect and independence I once enjoyed. Our marriage was generally stable, although at times it felt more like a boss-employee relationship than a partnership between husband and wife. One particularly tough day, I fell ill and couldn't muster the strength to leave the bed, let alone handle my usual housework. I planned to rest for the day and catch up on chores the following day. However, Thomas had other ideas. He stormed into the bedroom, visibly angry, and demanded, "What are you doing? Get up and make some food," even going so far as to kick the blanket off me. I tried to explain, "I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well today," hoping for some sympathy or at least understanding. Instead, Thomas scowled and retorted, "You don't work and now you're lying down just because you're a bit sick? Pathetic." I was stunned by his lack of compassion. It wasn't something I had anticipated from him before our marriage. Despite my condition, I ended up doing the chores in tears, overwhelmed by the situation. A few days later, another surprise came my way. I had missed my period. Fearing the unexpected but also hopeful, I bought a pregnancy test from the drugstore. The result was positive. Overcome with joy, I cried happy tears, eager to share the news with Thomas as soon as he returned from work. That night, Thomas came home well past midnight, reeking of alcohol and barely able to walk straight. Despite his state, I couldn't contain my excitement about our growing family and decided to tell him immediately. "I haven't seen a doctor yet, so it's not confirmed," I began, trying to break the big news gently, but the reaction I received was nothing like I had hoped. Thomas's face darkened, and in a cold, severe tone, he said, "A child? What have you done?" His words were chilling. "I don't want a child. This is the worst. If you're going to have it, you'll have to take care of it yourself." His harsh dismissal left me devastated. He then undressed angrily and retreated to the bathroom, leaving me alone to grapple with his unexpected reaction. The happiness I had felt at our impending new life together turned into a deep, isolating sadness. I couldn't fathom why he was so dismissive and irresponsible about our future, about our baby. It was a painful realization that the support I needed and expected from my husband might not be there at all. The joy I had felt just moments earlier was swiftly replaced by a deep sadness. Thomas had never expressed a desire not to have children, and since we weren't using contraception, I had naturally assumed we were both open to starting a family. While I was tidying up, hanging Thomas's jacket, and about to launder his shirt, I discovered something unexpected in his pocket, a piece of paper that initially seemed like a receipt from the night's outing. Curiosity stopped me from tossing it away when I noticed it was a receipt from a motel. My hands trembled as the reality set in, and a wave of shock washed over me. Why would Thomas have a motel receipt? We had been married for just over a year, and marriage was supposed to be built on love and mutual respect. Growing up, I had often dreamed of romantic relationships but had limited real-life experience. The harsh truth hit me hard, and suspicions of Thomas's infidelity began to make a painful amount of sense. Was he only using me while being involved with someone else? Could this explain his harsh reaction to the news of my pregnancy? These troubling thoughts made me feel even more nauseous, and a sense of betrayal started to overwhelm me. I began to suspect that Thomas might have a mistress, possibly someone from our former workplace, and that he married me more for stability than for love. The pieces were starting to fit together, blurring the lines between reality and my fears. Despite the hurtful words he had thrown at me upon learning of the pregnancy, I knew I had to find proof of his infidelity. His behavior had grown increasingly cold. Even as I dealt with morning sickness, he would intentionally eat foods with strong odors and criticize my housekeeping, forcing me to redo tasks. This was especially hard on my pregnant body and heart. Determined to uncover the truth, I faced the challenge of his guarded privacy. Thomas never let his cell phone out of his sight, even taking it with him to the bathroom, making it impossible for me to look through it. But I was resolved to find out everything, no matter how difficult it might be, as I could not let go of the hurtful things he had said and the possible betrayal that loomed over our marriage. Sneaking into Thomas's room, everything was always impeccably tidy, reflecting his organized nature, much like his spotless desk at work. It dawned on me that catching him in the act would be a formidable challenge. I diligently checked his pockets for any receipts or hints of evidence, but my efforts were fruitless. The idea of hiring a private detective crossed my mind, yet the financial burden was too much for me to bear at the moment. Feeling lost and overwhelmed by my circumstances, an unexpected phone call from my father came through, a rare occurrence given his usually hectic schedule. "Hello, it's me, your dad? How are you?" he asked, his voice a mix of concern and calm. I was taken aback by his call, knowing how engulfed he usually was with his work. "Dad, what's going on? Aren't you swamped with work?" "My employees have been handling things well, so I'm not that busy," he replied. As the CEO of a company in Mexico, my father had always been a workaholic. My childhood memories with him were sparse, but I respected his unwavering dedication to his career. Curious about the reason for his call, I urged him to continue. He then shared something utterly shocking, shaking the very foundation of what I thought I knew. "Is that true?" I gasped, unable to hide my astonishment. "Yes, he's not the type to lie. I want you to trust me," my father reassured me, his voice steady and sincere. Initially shocked, I slowly began to process this new revelation. A wave of relief washed over me as I realized my investigation was finally bearing fruit, mixed with a resurgence of anger due to the ongoing tension with Thomas. "Thank you, Dad. I'll do my best," I responded gratefully before ending the call. Despite the unfolding chaos, this newfound information provided a glimmer of hope. However, Thomas remained distant throughout my pregnancy, deepening the resentment I felt towards him. As months passed, our relationship continued to be strained and tense. Nearing my 9th month of pregnancy, I lived in constant apprehension around Thomas, trying my best to avoid any confrontations. The atmosphere at home was thick with unease, overshadowing what should have been a joyful culmination of my pregnancy. Living a quiet, somewhat restricted life had become the norm. One evening, as was usual, I served dinner while Thomas returned from work, and we sat together at the dining table. I ate in silence, trying to keep the peace, but suddenly Thomas slammed his fork down. "What is this? It's tasteless," he yelled, hurling the food I had painstakingly cooked onto the floor. I was taken aback by his sudden outburst and struggled to grasp the reason behind his aggression. He had complained before that my cooking had grown bland, but during my pregnancy, I had intentionally used less seasoning to keep our meals healthier. If the food needed more flavor, he could have simply added some salt himself. There was no need for such a dramatic display. As I was about to respond, Thomas sneered and made a deeply hurtful comment. "I don't want a woman with a belly like a monster. You'll have to raise the kid by yourself," he said, his words laced with malice and a cruel smile. I had feared a day like this might come, though I had secretly hoped for a different outcome. Swiftly, I went to my room, collected some documents, and returned to confront him. "Here are the divorce papers," I announced, sliding the documents across the table toward him. Thomas looked utterly stunned. "What the hell? What's this all of a sudden?" he asked. "Well, it was your idea. Just sign it quickly. I'll submit it tomorrow," I retorted. I had been contemplating divorce ever since I had begun to suspect Thomas's infidelity. With a baby on the way, I wasn't sure how I'd manage alone, but I had started to form a new plan. My determination seemed to infuriate Thomas further. His face flushed with rage as he threatened, "Just wait, I'll make you regret every moment you looked down on me and tried to control me. Do you think you can manage without me? You'll have a baby to care for, and you'll regret it." Despite his threats, I remained firm and composed. "I'll be fine. Don't worry about me," I assured him, possibly fueling his annoyance. In response, Thomas grabbed the divorce papers, his actions betraying his shock and perhaps a hint of fear. My resolve was clear. I was ready to start anew, regardless of the challenges ahead. Thomas swiftly filled out the divorce papers, handing them back to me with a mixture of resignation and disbelief. "Here you go. If this is what you want, it's yours," he said quietly. "Thank you," I replied, maintaining my composure. Thomas probably hadn't fully grasped that I was serious about going through with it, as he handed over the papers without much of a protest. The next day, I submitted the divorce papers and left our shared home. I was certain Thomas would be shocked to come home from work and find me gone. Shortly thereafter, I moved back to my parents' home. My father had recently returned to the U.S. from Mexico and invited me to stay with them. Accepting his offer was the right choice for me, given how drained I was from my life with Thomas. I was immensely thankful for my father's support during this tumultuous time. On the day I left Thomas, he called me 5 times. I ignored each call and eventually he stopped trying. It became painfully clear that I didn't mean much to him. He was likely content with his mistress and might have even been considering remarriage. Determined to move forward, I focused on the new chapter of my life. I welcomed a healthy baby and was living happily with my parents, enjoying a peaceful and supportive environment. Unexpectedly, Thomas reached out to me again. Initially, I ignored his calls, but he was persistent, and eventually I felt compelled to answer. "Hello, what do you want now?" I asked, tired of the disturbance. "Hey, what's going on? Why were you on that show? And since when are you the daughter of a CEO with millions of dollars?" Thomas's voice crackled through the phone, filled with surprise and a hint of anger. It turned out he had seen a television show featuring my family's lifestyle. After moving back with my parents, a TV station approached us due to my father's role as the CEO of a major global tech company. The show highlighted the luxurious lives of CEO families and was filmed at our home, discussing our family's wealth, estimated at around $40 million. I never anticipated that Thomas would see the show, let alone react like he did. Indeed, the reach of television is remarkable. In our conversation, I decided it was time to reveal something Thomas didn't know. "By the way, I inherited $52 million, which is why I was able to leave you so decisively," I informed him. My father had disclosed this inheritance to me, empowering me to live comfortably and independently after separating from Thomas. Thomas's reaction was immediate and furious. "What? That's unfair. Why didn't you tell me about this before? Half of it is mine, right? Give me the money now," he demanded. I replied calmly, as I had anticipated his reaction after he saw the show. "Just as I suspected, after seeing the show, all you can think about is getting money from me. Gifts from parents aren't included in the property division, and don't forget your actions," I reminded him. Thomas, confused and increasingly agitated, asked, "What are you talking about?" "I'm tired of your anger, Thomas. You called me. You should know you can't blame me for what you did. You cheated, didn't you? With your new wife, who's a junior from your company. You started seeing her even before we were married." I confronted him with the truth. Thomas was shocked by my knowledge of his affairs. I felt the scales tip in my favor as I continued. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? My father has many connections in your company, and one of them told me about your affair. I haven't mentioned it before, but I will be demanding child support," I declared firmly. Still in denial, Thomas argued, "Stop kidding. Why should I pay child support? It's all your fault. You got pregnant on your own and didn't keep up with the housework. It's your fault." I was stunned by his refusal to take responsibility and his blatant blame shifting. I couldn't believe I had ever been married to someone so unreasonable. "Thomas, I'm broke. My wife spent all my money and now I'm in debt," he lamented, attempting to garner my sympathy. However, his pleas did not move me. His refusal to acknowledge his own mistakes only fueled my anger and incredulity. I realized more than ever that leaving him was the right decision. Dealing with someone so delusional and irresponsible was no longer my burden to bear. Holding my phone tightly, I braced myself to end the conversation decisively. "What are you talking about? Do you even realize how ridiculous you sound? I never want to deal with you again. My lawyer will handle the child support. Don't call me again and you won't see the child anymore. Goodbye." After letting out my frustration, I quickly hung up the phone, blocked Thomas's number, took a deep breath, and felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was finally over, and I was determined to keep it that way, hoping to shield my peaceful life from any further disruptions from him. Just as I was soaking in the peace, I heard my baby cry from another room. Rushing to comfort them, I was reminded of the new priorities in my life. Soon after, I learned that Thomas began making regular child support payments. A former colleague mentioned that Thomas's new wife had expensive tastes, and he was racking up debts to sustain their lifestyle. It appeared Thomas had reached out to me in hopes of tapping into my inheritance, but without any financial gain from me, he found himself grappling with expenses his income couldn't cover. His struggles seemed to stem from poor financial planning and perhaps the blow to his ego, being looked down upon by his colleagues. Thomas had delayed looking for a new job until after he left his previous position, which only added to his financial difficulties. Hearing this didn't evoke sympathy in me. Rather, I felt that his current hardships were a direct consequence of his actions and decisions. The harsh treatment and cold behavior he had shown me were unforgettable, and I believed that he was merely reaping what he had sown. Meanwhile, life with my parents and baby was joyful and worry-free. With no financial concerns to weigh me down, I was excited about the future. My father had even mentioned the possibility of passing on the leadership of his company to me. Inspired by his dedication, I was eager to work hard and make the most of the opportunities ahead, fully embracing the new chapter of my life with optimism and resolve.